So, back in 70s and 80s, South Korea was going through its let's clean up the streets era. But instead of sweeping up trash, they were rounding up people. Homeless, you're in. Disabled, in. Orphan, in. Just walking alone at night. If you were unlucky enough to get caught in the social purification program, you were thrown into Brother's Home, a government backed prison disguised as a welfare center. This place wasn't some cute little shelter, it was a full blown labor camp where people were beaten, starved, and worked to the bone. Alright, imagine this. You get thrown into Brother's Home. What happens next? First, you get beaten for existing. Then, you get forced into manual labor for 16 plus hours a day. If you step out of line, you're tortured. Beatings were so bad, some people didn't make it out. Chemical restraints, yup, they drugged people into submission. Children being preyed on because apparently evil has no limits. By the way, this wasn't happening in some far away hidden dungeon. The South Korean government knew, and they were like, yeah, let's keep this going. Officially, 657 people died here. Unofficially, the number is probably way higher. And get this, when people died, their bodies weren't always returned to their families. Some were cremated without permissions. Some were sold to hospitals for research. Others just vanished. Yeah, vanished. So, survivors reported being beaten every single day. Steel pipes, wooden clubs, rubber hoses, bare fists, and boots. Gods didn't care if you were old, young, male, female, disabled, or sick. If you were in Brother's Home, you were getting hit. Most common injuries, broken ribs, shattered teeth, and permanent brain damage. Some people were beaten so badly that their faces swelled up beyond recognition. They weren't even seen as human anymore, just things to be controlled. Electric shock torture. If beatings weren't enough, electrocution was next. Guards that strapped inmates down and applied electric shocks to their fingers, toes, and genitals. The worst punishment, shocks to the tongue. It caused immediate paralysis and sometimes even stopped breathing. Why? For discipline or just because guards felt like it. Inmates were forced to watch and listen as others were tortured. If someone tried to escape, the entire dormitory was gathered to watch them beaten nearly to death. At night, screams echoed through the facility. Nobody slept. Gods made survivors bury the bodies of those who didn't survive, a constant reminder that they were next. The screams became normal. At some point, we just accepted that people were going to die. A survivor said that. Meals were rotten, infested with insects, or covered in mold. Portions were so small that people lost half their body weight in months. Sometimes guards spat in the food before handling it out. The worst part, if a guard didn't like you, they just skip your meal for the day. No food, no explanation. Some inmates were so hungry that they ate insects and even dirt just to stay alive. People were forced to work 16 to 18 hours a day in factories. No breaks, no pay. If someone collapsed, they were beaten until they got back up or until they died. Inmates were locked inside giant water tanks for hours or even days. The tanks had barely enough air. People gasped for breath, some drowned inside. When they were finally released, they were barely alive. Women were treated as property. God selected women at night, dragging them away while others watched in fear. Beating came first, to break them physically and mentally. When girls were essayed as young as 11 and 10 years old, even men were the victims. According to Commission's Wednesday announcement, evidence was found suggesting that internees who were labeled misfits or rebels were given psychiatric medication with psychiatric ward within Brother Homes, known as probationary platoon. The commissions confirmed that Brother Holmes purchased tablets of chlorpromazine used to treat symptoms of schizophrenia. The commission explained women were detained at the psychiatric ward at rate 4 times higher than that of men, and the rate of death by schizophrenia was much higher than men as well. Kim Choi was 14 years old and living with his grandmother when he was forcibly taken to brother's home, living alone in a bedsit not far from where the facility once was. He reluctantly recounts an occasion where the inmate was killed during a punishment session. The person had complained, "Why are we here? Why do we have to endure this torture? Send us all home." The leaders dragged him away, rolled him up in a blanket, and viciously kicked him, he says, stamping his feet on the ground before adding, "He never returned to the platoon, which means he was dead." Just like Squid Games, they were given number. They didn't have names, but they weren't even allowed to talk to each other at all. If they did, they were beaten. Brother Home was officially known as Hongji Bokjiwon, was an internment facility in Busan, South Korea, operating from 1975 to 1987. Originally established as a welfare center, it became infamous for severe human rights abuses. During 1970s and 1980s, under the authority regimes of Park Chung-hee and Chung Do-han, South Korea implemented social purification. As part of these efforts, authorities detained the individuals deemed as homeless, disabled, often without due process, and confined them in facilities. The whistleblower that almost got buried in 1987, a prosecutor named Kim Yong-won, stumbled onto this nightmare and was like, "What is this? What the fuck is this?" He tried to explode. The government tried to shut him up. The facility got shut down, but guess what? The guy in charge, Park In-gun, only served 2.5 years in prison, 2.5 years for mass abuse, torture, and literal murder. Meanwhile, if you download a movie illegally, you might get hit with a bigger fine. Make it make sense, bro. And the laws of South Korea are so, oh my god, like so bad, like really, really bad. Even now, like there was a case in like 2011, where a 13-year-old boy in Daegu jumped from his apartment after leaving a note detailing a horrific bullying incident. His bullies tied him up with electrical wires. They burned him with lighters and cigarettes. They forced him to beat up another victim. They stole his money daily and threatened to kill him. His parents had no idea until it was too late. The bullies barely punished. In 2024, a viral video of a Seoul student brutally beaten. In March 2024, a video went viral in South Korea. A 16-year-old girl violently assaulting another girl, dragging her by the hair, smashing her head into the ground, and kicking her. The victim lost 4 teeth, broke a cheekbone, and needed leg surgery. Even worse, the attacker smiled and laughed on camera. The school tried to cover it up, but after the public outrage, police got involved. The slave bullying case. Some bullying goes beyond beating. Students are treated like slaves. Victims are forced to buy food, do homework, and run errands for their bullies. Some are made to clean up urine and feces or endure public humiliation. A victim in Busan was forced to eat toilet water as punishment. It's not bullying, it's psychological, physical torture. The real problem in Korea's forgiveness culture is forced to apologize instead of getting real punishment. Given a second chance because they're too young for jail? Girl, are you kidding me? Protected if they come from rich or powerful families. If you're rich, the law is just a suggestion. Until punishments become real, nothing will change. What needs to happen for change? Stronger punishment, schools that protect victims, more mental health support for victims, public pressure to hold rich and powerful bullies accountable. Korean society hates bullies but still protects them. Until that changes, tragedies like Daegu and Seoul will keep happening. That's all for today. Let me know what do you think about the brotherhood incident and the Korean law system. Thanks for watching.